Well, at one point, this guy, Steve Wall, walks into my office at Geographic and says, "Harvey, I met this Indian. He's a photographer. I barely knew him. He's an outside photographer. He wasn't at Geographic. He's a contract photographer." So he says, "Harvey, I've met this Indian." He says, "Yeah? So? You met an Indian, so what?" He says, "Well, he's got this terrific story he talks about. I'd like to go do a story with him. He's a medicine man." He was asked by two elders, one Wolf Sequoia up in Carolina and the other Billy Josie down in Florida, the Seminole. They both asked him to come and study with them. And he thought about it and he says, "Well, I don't know, I want to become one of these higher, ceremonial figures." So he declined to study with either of these two great elders, our famous elders. And then they both died very rapidly after that. And he was really torn that he'd been offered this privileged experience and had declined it, and then they died, and now it was gone. And he felt like he owed somebody something. He wanted to take a journey of penance to the various, and he had in mind the 7 Indian nations, what he called the Cherokee, the Seminole, Lakota, all over the country, and really 7 languages. And so I talked Geographic into doing that story. That was my job, and I was to become the editor of it. And he and Steve were going to go out on this journey in what they called the Rambling Teepee, and it was a nifty story. Unfortunately, he was going around to all the other elders, and this really put him off a little. He didn't feel still competent to talk to all these elders, and one day he turned to Steve and says, "I'm taking off." He says, "What do you mean you're taking off? We're in the middle of a National Geographic story. We had given them money and expense." And he says, "No, I'm taking off. This is your journey now." And Steve called me up and told me, "Well, it's over. 2 trees just took off." And I said, "Well, hell, I was supposed to write it anyway, or at least edit it. And why don't we keep doing it, and I'll take his role. I'll play what I was, a National Geographic, writer." And so we did. We started off on that, and it has not ended to this day. That was at least 35 years ago. And we've done so many stories. My last story at Geographic, next to last story, had been something that was supposedly to be, they wanted a story on medicine men. I'd introduced the idea of medicine men anyway with 2 trees. And so they decided they were going to do a trip of me and Steve traveling around just talking to elders in the various tribes. And which indeed we did set off on. And that became, well, we went and did it. We brought back some wonderful film. Steve took it to a publisher named Beyond Words in Portland, Oregon, the idea of it. And they said, "Yeah, we'll do it. We like your pictures, and we'll do a story in a magazine or something with you." And so he called me and said, "Harvey, you're going to write this? Because I don't think I could write it." And I said, "You bet." We went off, and that became the book Wisdomkeepers, which was an instant bestseller back in 1990. Wisdomkeepers, a spirit journey into the lives of Native American wisdom keepers. I later did the same thing in Australia with the Aboriginal people, wonderful people, just like Indian people, so much. And went on to do many stories in the footsteps of Moses, Hans Christian Andersen, Chicago, Sumatra, 20-odd stories for Geographic. That was quite a career. That was the middle of my life, the middle 23 years. I was 33 when I started, and 33 and 55 or so when I left Geographic. And since then, I've produced about 10 books here, all relating to indigenous wisdom, philosophy, and why a nice Jewish white boy like me is doing this kind of work, I don't know, but the Creator arranges things.